Just to give you an idea of how this topic came up, I was wanting to do something with digital music services, and I wasn't really sure in what direction to take it. And then a friend of mine's sister, who's in a band, one of the first acts, or first women to set up her own label to promote her own music, and she seems to be doing all the right things and also making some pretty decent music, because a lot of the time working the business side and making good music is kind of inversely proportional. So you get great musicians that are shit at business and people that are great at doing business but really aren't making very good music. So I thought, well, what a better opportunity then to adapt this particular subject and get some great people in to give their views and their experiences. Now, it seems to have divided a bit into the digital and the more physical, but that's not deliberate. I had them sitting around a table at lunchtime, so they all like each other up until now. So, David, do you want to introduce yourself wearing your Fine Tunes hat?
Sure. Yeah, my name's David. I work for a company called Fine Tunes, which is described as a digital media services company. Short explanation of that is that we work with independent record labels and take care of pretty much all of their needs relating to digital. So that's supplying music to people like iTunes or Spotify, royalty reporting, promotion, marketing, advising on strategy, and really trying to give like an end-to-end service to be a partner with labels and help them build their sales.
Scott?
Yeah, I'm Scott Cohen. I'll wear two hats. One is The Orchard, which is a distribution company. I founded in the mid-90s. We primarily focus on digital, but we also own a physical distribution company as well. We supply 2.5 million tracks, which is about 20% of all the music online comes through our company. We have offices in 25 countries around the world. We do all the marketing, promotion, setup, all the things that David was just saying, we also do. And then I'll wear my manager's hat a bit too, where I work with a number of indie acts. I don't know if you know any of my bands. The Ravenettes, does anyone know them? Or a new one called the Dum Dum Girls on Sub Pop. And actually, when I was up here, was it last year when Gavin Bain was speaking? One of the artists that was here last year, now I work with him and manage his career.
One of the bands playing tonight supported the Dum Dum Girls, so
cool.
Yeah, you can check them out later as well. Matthew.
Yes. Yeah, my name is Matthew. I started out writing a music blog called Song by Toad in 2004. And then a few years ago, my wife and I got quite drunk and promised some friends of ours that we'd release their record if they didn't get a proper record label. And so we sort of accidentally became a record label in about 2008. And the idea was that because I had the blog and we had an audience, that we'd just be a pre-label sort of thing. So we'll help you do a self-release until you get a proper label. And what happened was, I think the first thing that we released just turned out to be a bit too. It just did too well, and so we accidentally after accidentally becoming a label, we accidentally became a proper label as well, or at least that seems to be the perception. Since about 2008 that's been going on.
Stewart.
Hi, I'm Stewart Henderson. I run Chemikal Underground Records. It's an independent label based out of Glasgow, which myself and my then bandmates, Paul and Alan and Emma, we used to be in a band called the Delgados. We established Chemikal Underground in 1995. And similarly, in a lot of ways to Matthew, actually, we gained or had a lot of success very early on with bands like Biss and Arab Strap and Mogwai, and found ourselves, running a fairly big going concern at the time. And we're still hanging in there at the moment. That's 15 years was our anniversary last year.
So supposing when you started out, you were like non-digital DIY.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the issues and one of the things that I would never claim to be very well informed about. I'm often asked, by people who want to start up a record label. You know, how do I go about starting up a record label? And the honest answer is now is I haven't got a fucking clue. It has completely altered the whole dynamic, if you like, through retail. Commercially has just changed completely. The internet was really a babe in arms when we started, and in a lot of respects, I think Chemikal Underground was very lucky in the sense that we got in under the wire. We managed to establish the label commercially and financially on the back of physical retail, where the money is, or certainly where the money was. So I think the fact that it was a simpler time, sound like a Chelsea pensioner now, but it was a simpler model that we got ourselves into. You start a label, you print up a letterhead, you send some letters off to some distributors and hope that they'll distribute your product for you, and that's how we got started. And we were fortunate enough that the artists came along that gave us the credibility, if you like, and the sort of financial oomph to keep going. But it's an entirely different beast now, which I'm no doubt we'll be talking about over the course of the next hour or so.
So, I mean, what's interesting is that, you know, both of you have already pretty much alluded to the fact that it essentially started out as a DIY thing. I mean,
yeah, we started out specifically as digital DIY. I mean, we had no authority whatsoever to be a record label. I had no idea what I was doing. And I just quite simply took the approach that because I was writing the blog, I was getting a lot of press releases. So you start to understand the way people release records and what information you have to provide and when you have to provide it. And so I thought, well, okay, I can do that side of it. Because I was writing a blog, I knew lots of other bloggers. So I thought, well, at least I know I can get things written up by my pals who are also writing web.
Oh.
Yeah, so I knew I could get at least some basic publicity for the band. And the bands that we were working with were active bands. So it's just like, well, we'll press up some copies of your CD. You can sell it at gigs. We'll put a PayPal link on the website. We'll put it up on, we can get it, you know, we use TuneCore, but you could use Emu Bands or CD Baby to get it up available online in most of these places. We'll totally ignore physical distribution except for the 2 or 3 shops that we know personally. And we'll just go for it that way. And that's literally, I mean, we paid about £1,000 or slightly more to get the first run of the record pressed and some promo copies made. And all the rest of it was me sat in my room sending emails again and again and again and again.
Do you know any bands that do that themselves? Well, I mean, the way we started the label, there's and these guys at lunch, I didn't say anything, but they all seemed to be, in a way, very anti-DIY, like, because it takes so much work. And there's no reason a band can't do that, but I've yet to meet a band who does. So the best thing about me from the band's perspective is I have no musical talent whatsoever. So you end up in the situation where you want to make a contribution, and the only way you can do it is by being organized and doing all this donkey work. And there's no reason bands can't do this for themselves, but I've just never met a band yet who had the right mentality, who were willing to put, you know, they put work into the music, into playing, into going from one shit venue to the next and playing in front of 5 people in the hopes that the next gig will be good. You know, to do all this other depressing work as well is not something that most bands have got in them, really. They're already exhausted by the process of making music. So, I mean, the impression I get is that there are a lot of services, digital services, that pretty much promise you the earth. Is like, you know, one thing that I've seen a lot is like, yeah, well, you know, we've had so many top 40 hits through taking on your stuff, which, you know, given the sort of sales figures, probably isn't as remarkable as it was even 5 years ago. But I think that there are a lot of things that are more, at least that's based on sort of something that's happened. I mean, I think that there seems to be a lot of services that really effectively promise to make you a star. It's like, you know, sign up with this service, forget the record labels, you're going to be minted and you can control your own destiny. I mean, have any of you guys encountered anything along these lines?
Well, yeah. So I want to go back to something first. Well, all right, I'll answer that quickly. Is that you know, if everyone has access to the same tools, then they're no longer an advantage. It's something you need to do. So I think that sometimes the services that purport to help you, which are good services, give the impression that by using them, somehow you gain an advantage. But no, you're doing the same thing that everyone else is doing, so it just levels it out again. But really going back to that kind of the notion of the DIY thing, because, you know, I'm an indie guy, but anyone that knows me knows that I always say that, you know, do it yourself doesn't mean do it alone. You know, it's the attitude of you're in control of your own career, top of the food chain, but it doesn't mean you don't create a team around you. Even the most successful DIY artists like the Radioheads and Trent Reznors of the world, that you go, wow, they just did it themselves. Well, not really. I mean, they saw themselves, you know, as at the top, but they created a team around them. And if you want to call it a label, you can call it a label, but they're doing all those functions of a label. And you can't really do everything yourself. And especially if you're a young artist, you don't have the relationships in the business. You know, you said in the earlier panel when it was about, you know, if you know him, he'll hook you up with that and he'll get you that. You know, that's just what happens when you surround yourself with experienced people. That was kind of a vague example, but it was getting on a festival.
I did say like a lot of their bands were crap though, and that was quite alarming when you get dragged along by someone you've known for a long time and the bands suck. But that's beside the point. I mean, I think that surely though there is an area here where if you're at fairly sort of entry level as a band, as a musician, a label is probably not going to bother about you, but there are things, or there are services that can really, you know, make it worth your while. That'll help you generate a small amount of money, and you know, allow you to, if you're playing to get up to playing to 100 people, then there's an easy ways for them to buy your music without having anyone else involved. Really, I mean. What would you say, David, in terms of services that are out there that you would rate? I mean, I imagine there's quite a few that aren't really that great.
It's like we were discussing just before the panel. It's both the beauty and the curse of the internet is that anyone can release music. So, you know, if you've got music and you want to release it, there are ways to do that. How you do that is the next question, and with who. I think for most labels, the idea of doing all the technical stuff required and negotiating deals with iTunes or eMusic or Spotify, whoever, is just way beyond anything they ever want to get into or should get into, because it's a technical, a legal job. So you go to a range of companies that are out there, the Orchard and Fine Tunes being some of them, who offer a range of different services. Like on our level, we offer a really complete package, a lot of manpower, and we take a cut of revenue for that. So we work on a revenue share basis. If you're a smaller act, perhaps it makes more sense to go, well, I just want to get my music on the internet. How am I going to do that quickly, effectively, cheaply? And there's another range of services, companies like TuneCore, or a good Scottish company called Emu Bands. I know Stewart's here, who you can pay a flat fee and they will do all that technical stuff for you. They've got the deals with iTunes, so you pay a certain amount, call it 50 quid, your album will be delivered, you will get paid, and all of that workload is off you. So I think that that's actually, although it's not what I do as a company, I think that's a very useful solution for some people, and it's the right solution for many people.